Good morning. This is May the 2nd, 2024, and today we're going to talk with Colleen Kjellman about, always call it child daycare, and it's called early years, and it's called early on. And so she's going to clarify for us how it started, why it started, and maybe the different names that, oh, yes, and she's wearing brass bells, so I guess that's the name right now. But anyway, so how do you think it started, or why did it start, Colleen?
Okay, thank you, Glenna. So I'd like to begin by sharing that story of how Brass Bell came to be and where the name came from. So it all started back in 1991 when the new Dorian Public School was being built. Okay, and the government of that day, the provincial government, mandated that any new school build would have a daycare, as they were called at that time, built into it. So that school was built and a space was built into the school for a daycare. So this is back in 1991. However, Brass Bell never operated that space as a daycare due to lack of community need and feasibility. At that time, there wasn't a community need, many stay-at-home moms, etc. So the volunteer board who came to be at that time pursued other options and funding, and a family resource program was born. And this was in order to support child and family development. The center actually opened in 1993 with a full-time coordinator and a part-time program assistant.
Any names?
Well, the name at that time changed to Brass Bell Family Resource Center.
I meant the person running it.
Oh, yes. So the very first executive director was Nancy Cooney from Pass Lake.
Right.
And the program assistant was Lana Desjardins.
Oh, Lana's been involved in a long time in the education system.
Yeah.
Wow.
And just on the various executive directors. So then Nancy was there till 1995, and she went on maternity leave. And Beth Day from Nipigon covered that maternity leave for a short time, for a year actually. And then in 1995, Janet McKay became the new executive director.
Okay.
And she was a mover and a shaker and did so much to advance and expand.
Right. Yep.
And provide services to children and families in Nipigon, Dorian, Red Rock, and across the lakeshore. So
the first one opened in Dorian.
Correct.
And then how did it make its way to the other? Oh, well, because George O'Neill renovated big time, so they must have been allowed to put it in.
That came much later.
Okay.
So in 1993, the Dorian Center opened, and it was called Brass Bell Family Resource Center, and it served the community of Dorian 4 days a week with drop-in programs, parent-child playgroup, they were called, programs there. And with the focus to really improve the health and development of children and support parents.
Right.
A place for parents to come together. And at that time, the center was funded by the provincial government under the Ministry of Community and Social Services. And we, as you said, Glenna, we've had many name changes, funding changes, that never remained status quo, always changing.
Right.
So Brass Bell served Dorian 4 days a week, and then they started offering outreach programming to the Nipigon and the Red Rock volunteer parent-child playgroups that were happening.
Oh, okay.
So the staff person would go once a month and bring toys and offer toy lending and try to do some activities.
I remember the toy lending.
Mm-hmm. And I think we were at the Nipigon Community Center for a time. And then in Red Rock, they were in a church basement. And then eventually Red Rock started using the place in the basement of the municipal office where the daycare once was. Because don't forget, there was a daycare in Red Rock. But we weren't part of that, so I don't have the information on that.
Right. Okay.
Yeah.
Okay.
So that was for about 4 years, just once a month.
Because I remember being very confused sometimes by what two programs were running at George O'Neill. There was somebody working in this one and somebody working in that one. But the Brass Bell was just part of what was happening there.
Well, that we moved into, I can get to that.
Yeah.
We didn't move into George O'Neill till 2007.
Okay.
Yeah. So I'll just
Yeah,
finish
that's
up
fine.
with what I have here. So in 1999, the Public Health Agency of Canada, which is part of the federal government, put out a call for proposals to establish programs for those vulnerable children and families. And that was for across the North Shore of Lake Superior. So Brass Bell put in a proposal and was successful. So there was a new funding pot and also a new mandate. And from that, the Family Place, as it was called, which we love that name, the
Right,
Family
right.
Place in Nipigon opened, and it was down at the end of Friend Street, which I believe was Sally Obbitt's building.
Okay, I didn't remember that.
Yeah, so that
Interesting.
started. It was very popular. There were so many young families and stay-at-home moms and dads who wanted to access the program. In fact, I recall they had a process where you had to phone and put your name down to get a spot. And once they were full, because it was a smaller space, they were full, and then you couldn't attend. Yeah, it was very popular.
I didn't remember it being there.
No way. Yeah, you forget that.
Yeah,
Yeah, I
you
remember
do.
that because I had just started with Brass Bell in 1999, and I remember being there helping to paint the space.
Huh?
And there wasn't a great deal of funding. We really had to make do with what we had.
Right.
Yeah, so that was and we called it the Family Place, and then that was a name that Brass Bell took on. Brass Bell Family Resource Center remained the overarching organization, and that's our incorporated name, but we gave the name the Family Place to all of our sites.
Right.
We really like that name.
Right. Because it's inviting, isn't it?
Mm-hmm.
The word family is inviting.
Yeah, it is.
Rather than just child care or something.
Right.
Right.
Yeah.
It's inviting.
And then in 2001, we also received approval from the Public Health Agency of Canada to sponsor a Canada Prenatal Nutrition Program, another very small funding pot with a specific focus. So that brings us to 2002. And at that time, there was a provincial early years initiative launched, and the provincial government implemented a new program, and Brass Bell was chosen as the lead Ontario Early Years Centre for the Thunder Bay Superior North Riding,
Wow.
which was Armstrong to Manitowoc.
Ooh.
So that was a new funding pot, a new mandate, a new set of guidelines and requirements.
So when you got a new funding, did the old funding drop off? You weren't.
Yes, we weren't
Okay.
under the Ministry of Community and
Right.
Social Services then, but the Public Health Agency of Canada funding has continued to this day.
Okay.
But here's a little fun fact. That funding has not increased since 2001 and 2002.
Oh my goodness.
Yeah, we've been going through some changes with the Public Health Agency
Right.
of Canada.
So Dorian was the lead, and the rest were umbrella sort of
Yes,
underneath
yeah.
them.
And I should mention as well, the Dorian site is our head office. That has been maintained for our administration team.
Okay.
So the executive director and our financial officer, Kitty Demonsky, who has been with Brass Bell since 1999.
Wow.
She started doing the books at home, and then, as the organization grew, the need for increased financial support also grew.
Right. I guess so.
Yeah. So we really have grown. So then we all of these early years programs called Ontario Early Years Centres were developed across the province. The province wanted a consistent branding, wanted families to know anywhere in the province you could access one of these centers. So Brass Bell then expanded further into Scriber, Terrace Bay, Manitowoc.
Okay.
And then if I go back to our Canada Prenatal Nutrition Program, to this day we still host a small program in Marathon, 1 day a week. But we don't run the early years services there. Another organization does. It's a bit fragmented.
Right.
Yeah.
So in 2024, like right now, where are the programs held? Nipigon, Red Rock, Dorian.
Yeah, Nipigon, Red Rock, Dorian, Scriber, Terrace Bay, Manitowoc, and then the Baby Beginnings program 1 day a week in Marathon.
Okay.
And then along with that, in this day and time, we also have our licensed childcare as it's called. It's not referred
Okay.
to as daycare
Right.
anymore. And as you mentioned, so that happened in 2007. In 2005, 2006, the George O'Neill Public School was planning a renovation. And the provincial government at that time, again, another mandate, wanted all the early years services to be in schools.
Right.
So we worked with Superior Greenstone District School Board, and they allocated a wing for us to open that licensed childcare. So that was our first venture, and our currently we only have one licensed childcare program,
Right.
and that opened in 2007,
Okay.
October 2007. The space wasn't finished. I remember moving in. It was a bit chaotic, but we've done it. And also then our early on, which we're called now early on child and family centers. And that became Early On Child and Family Centers in 2018. New government, new provincial government. Again, they want to change the program, and the early years funding changed to Early On Child and Family Centers across the province.
So lots of people like me still call it childcare.
Yeah, or daycare.
Or daycare,
yeah, for
right?
sure,
You still
for
do,
sure.
right? Yeah, because that's easy to remember.
Yeah, and in there was also another Best Start initiative. I don't know if you remember, our name changed to Best Start,
Yes.
and that was confusing. So we've endured a few name changes, a few funding
Right.
changes.
Right.
And currently, what the other thing that happened in 2018, the funding went from the Ministry of Child and Youth Services to the Ministry of Education. So now we're under the auspices of the Ministry of Education, but they flow the dollars to the Thunder Bay District Social Services Administration Board. So they are actually the current day early years and child care manager.
Oh,
So we have, it's provincial funding, but it flows through them and we report to them.
they've got a lot on their plate, social services.
They do. They do.
really do.
And that's the same across the province. And then we have our Public Health Agency of Canada programs as well.
Right, right.
That really are focused on reaching those families facing challenging life circumstances.
So, Colleen, is the number that are allowed to sign up depend on the size of the space you have or the number of people working?
For licensed childcare, there are ratios, of
Oh.
course, which is based on space and staff. So at our licensed childcare program currently, we have a toddler group of 5 toddlers. We have a preschool, 2 preschool groups, which is a max of 16, and that's 2 staff. And then we have a school age program or after school program where we would have 12 children from JK to 12 years
Oh,
of age.
okay. So there's 3 different age groups then,
Yeah.
depending on staff.
Yeah, depending on staffing, and you have to have the current spaces. For the early on child and family center programs, we are not that busy. There would be a maximum based on fire ratios, right? However, we have never had to turn people away.
Right, okay.
Yeah, but some of our spaces are smaller and they do get full.
Right, right, right.
Yeah.
What hours would a early on years program run?
So programming varies depending on what's going on. It could start at 9, 9:30, 10, have a morning program. And with a focus on that morning program, it is drop-in. Many of our programs are drop-in. But there is intention with that drop-in. We really believe and we follow How Does Learning Happen, which is Ontario's pedagogy for the early years. And it really is about how learning happens. And we know the first 5 years are the most critical for brain development and how vital
Right.
our programs are
Right.
for children, but also for parents. Parents need that support, right?
Right.
So, and then so we may have a morning program that could consist of drop in, time to socialize. There might be a provocation, as we call them, out for the children to explore. And then our staff, our early years educators, have received a great deal of learning on expanding the child's learning and following their lead through documentation, observation, and reflection.
Okay.
Yeah, it's much more than just playgroup.
Right.
Yeah.
But I'm of that school where play is learning.
Well, and it is. It all is learning through
I was
play.
all about play.
Yes, and that's what it is. The children play. There is no adult themed craft.
No.
You know, it's all about the process, not the
Right.
product. We also promote in the last few years a great deal of outdoor play,
Right.
and just how important that connection to
Right.
nature and being outside is
Right.
for all types of development, including well-being for children and families.
Right. Yeah.
We really have a dedicated and caring staff. They work hard to ensure the programs are meaningful. And the other part of our mandate is offering workshops, partnering with our community partners to increase awareness and education on various topics, all related to the overall health and development of families.
Okay.
The public health nurse will come in. She might talk about immunization. She might talk about nutrition. She might talk about environmental health. We would have a social worker come in from whatever agency to talk about maternal mental health.
Right.
We've had financial workshops. We've done a great deal around budgeting, nutrition, food. Let me just check my notes here.
That's good.
We do a lot.
Yeah, for sure.
The other thing I was going to mention for Nipigon, so in 1999, as I had mentioned, we were down at the end of Front Street in that smaller space, but I believe it was between 2002, 2003, we then were able to obtain a larger space with that additional funding of becoming an early Ontario Early Years Center. I'm getting mixed up. It was the Ontario Early Years Center. And we moved into the building beside Zechner's. Next to where the jewelry store was. Now where the Children's Aid is.
Right.
So it was the Gazette, but we were in there, and that was a great location, right downtown. People were downtown and would stop in. However, there wasn't an outdoor space. Parking was an issue.
Oh, of course.
Yeah.
I think I remember that now. That was one of the reasons for moving.
Yeah. And then, of course, wanting to move forward and support the community with opening a licensed childcare, which was very much needed and has been full ever since we've opened with a huge wait list. And then also the mandate from the provincial government to be located in a school.
In schools. Do you think that was a good idea?
Yes, for sure. That it really helps us build a relationship with the school and helps families feel comfortable with their child before their child enters school. I mean, we're not in every school.
Right.
But in all of the communities we serve, we are located in a school. But I mean, we're just in the public school here, not in the Catholic board.
Right.
But it does help families transition to kindergarten and help build those relationships.
Right. Well, I'm sure the kids feel more comfortable when they go to JK because they at least know some faces for the public school system. Anyway.
Yes, and the school has worked, all the schools have worked really, really diligently about creating those opportunities and having the staff come down and, mingle with our staff and come visit the programs. The children go up to the kindergarten room.
Right.
Yeah.
That's
so
good.
Really strong partnerships.
Okay, well, pause for a minute there, Kirsten. Okay, so continue. I just wanted to ask you, so the North Shore is covered, but what about Greenstone, Beardmore, those places, Colleen?
So the early years services are offered through the municipality of Greenstone for that area. We don't serve that area.
No, I see you didn't, but I wondered if there was one up there. Okay.
Yes, I don't know. I heard that they're not providing services in Beardmore, but they are responsible for that area.
Okay, so it's looked after up in that area too.
Yes.
Okay, so continue with a bit more information about how early on Brass Bell is governed there.
Yeah, and what we've been doing because of all the name changes, our staff have really felt committed to and really promoting us as Brass Bell Family Resource Center, and we offer these different programs: licensed childcare, early on child and family center, the Public Health Agency of Canada programs. I just wanted to mention how Brass Bell is governed. So we are governed by a volunteer board of directors, and they work in a governance model. They are not a working board, but they are responsible for the overall operation and finances of the organization. And as we do have sites in communities all the way from Dorian to Manitouwadge, we strive to have a board member from each community.
That's important.
Yes, and currently we do. We have developing our board. So
who is the head of your board right now?
Malin Chouinard is the
Oh.
chair of our board of directors, and she has been the chair for, or been a part of the board of directors and the chair for a very long time. I want to say 13 years,
Oh.
maybe longer, and forgive me if I'm wrong, Malin. And she is going to be retiring this year.
Oh.
So we've been very fortunate to have her, and because she's a teacher at the Doring Public School, it was very convenient to work with
Right.
her.
Is she retiring from teaching too?
She is.
Is she?
Yes.
Wow.
After 30 years.
30 years. Oh
Yeah.
my goodness.
So there will be, some changes in our board, and we're looking forward to that.
Right. So how do you go about getting new members or getting people for your board?
We usually recruit. We try to look at someone in the community and what their skill set is, what their role is in the community. Do they have an understanding of what's happening in their community?
Okay. Okay. I didn't know. I had no idea that. And how many are on a board?
I think we can have a maximum of 9, or I should say we can have a maximum of 9, a minimum of 3. So we currently have 6, which is a nice number
Okay.
to work with.
Okay. So how often would a board meet?
They meet monthly.
Oh.
However, they do not meet in December, March, July, or August. So there are 8 meetings per year plus the annual general
Okay.
meeting, and then special meetings as required.
Right. Right. So when you have an annual meeting, is it open to the public?
It is. It is.
Okay.
It's usually at the end of June or sometimes in July, and we do advertise it. The last few years since COVID, it's been via Zoom.
Right. Right.
But we also have hosted open houses. Our staff have worked really hard at inviting community members in to gain an understanding of what services we offer.
Right.
And people are welcome to pop in.
So people who don't know anything about this should also understand that you have a nutrition program and you have a cook and you provide meals.
And yes,
Part of that.
yeah, we have a philosophies of food, and we believe in serving high quality, unprocessed snacks and meals. So we do have a cook, a part-time cook at our childcare in Nipigon.
Right.
Yeah, and they
Right.
follow the Thunder Bay District Health Unit guidelines.
Okay. I just didn't know if you had them in, but it's just where the daycare one is.
Just the childcare. Yes.
Childcare,
Yes, but
okay.
we do offer a great deal of programming around food. We offer a daily snack, a healthy,
Right.
simple snack every morning. All our programs are free,
Right.
free of charge, other than licensed childcare.
Well, Marcy is the cook there, and I've often talked to her about it, and she says it's interesting because the food they serve there, the kids will eat it, but she finds out after if I had to serve that food at home, they don't want it. But
Very
while
true.
they're there with
Yes.
all their peers, they'll eat the healthy
Yes.
food that is presented. And her and I always had a smile about that. Because
Yes.
the kids don't even think about, I can't turn this down here.
No, it's so true. That's how
Yes.
children are. And we find that in our early years programs as well. We'll offer, something unique, pumpkin oatmeal at snack time, and they'll eat that. So then the parent will try make it at home and the child will refuse it.
Right.
And back to Marcy, yes, the children often talk about Marcy's pizza, which is made with a sauce from lentils, adding that extra nutrition and fiber and protein alternative to the meals. And they'll all say, "Oh, it's not Marcy's pizza today."
Oh, interesting,
Yeah.
that the
Yeah.
kids realize that.
Yeah, for sure.
Yeah. So I'm just thinking even Marcy likely educated herself on a lot of healthy recipes because she was told that's what their
Yes,
children
exactly.
are served.
Yeah,
Right.
Yeah, very part
That's good.
one of our values
Right.
of Brass Bell.
Tell me how the people who work for the early on and the daycare have to be qualified.
So to work in early on and licensed childcare, we always recruit for registered early childhood educators, which is a 2-year program through many
Right.
colleges. And we're been very grateful that we have several working within our organization across many sites. There are some opportunities currently for free tuition through the provincial government because there is a lack of early childhood educators across the province and including Thunder Bay and District.
Wow.
But we also have staff who are not formally trained, but they've got it.
Right.
They have a love for children. They offer warm, welcoming programs, and we've done an enormous, extensive amount of learning with our staff.
Right. So do you offer maybe little courses for them once they start working for you?
Absolutely, yeah. Ongoing professional learning is a big part of what we do, part of our organization.
Right.
And there's always something new, and there are opportunities sometimes offered through our funders and other organizations.
Right.
Yeah, our staff have received a great deal of training.
So how many staff would be there? I'm putting you on the spot, but anyway, how many staff would you have, say, at George O'Neill?
So in our Early On Child and Family program, our Early On Child and Family Center, we would have one staff, one educator, and a coordinator who oversees 3 sites, Nipigon, Dorian, Red Rock.
Okay.
And then in our childcare program, so we would have, our cook is part-time, and then probably 6 other educators during the day. So we could have, anywhere from 6 to 10 staff at George O in a day.
Right. That's a good incentive, though, for people who are interested in children and education.
Absolutely.
To keep an eye on that, to maybe work there. I think that's important.
I think we're right now at 24 staff total, maybe 25. And
so that's a good employer.
Across all of our sites.
That's a good employer then.
Yeah, and we try to be family friendly, and we do have a dedicated caring group. That's really important for us.
Right. So do you have one person in charge then at each of those places, or just, though you said one person in charge of the 3 sites?
So we have a early years coordinator for Nipigon, Dorian, Red Rock.
And that is?
Close. That's Anna Gilbo. She's been doing that for Anna Brochu.
Right.
Yeah, she's been doing that role for quite a few years.
Right.
And then in Scriber, Terrace Bay, we have a coordinator and an educator at each site, and our coordinator there is Krista Minot.
Okay.
Manitouage, we have a coordinator and 1 early years educator, and our coordinator is Tanya Lalonde. And then in Marathon, our staff person is Jennifer Kress, and she's somewhat of a standalone there for her Baby Beginnings program. She does it all.
Okay.
And then, as I mentioned, we have Kitty Demodsky in Dorian at our head office, and myself, and our educator there is Lucy Lankamaki.
Oh, is it? Okay, I didn't know that. So I don't know who those people are.
Yeah.
And that's good to hear their names for the future. But you've had quite a few people go through the Nipigon site, and I think of all the people who've worked there.
Yes.
And I mean, I don't know how many men you've had, but I always remember that Ted was one of the few men who was working in the after-school program. And the boys loved him because it was a male figure, right?
We would be very open and would be a great asset if we were able to recruit a male educator.
Right.
Yeah. And then we had Gordon McKenzie on staff as our data analysis coordinator, but that was a position that was attached to the Ontario Early Years Centers, and then that funding was changed and that position ceased to exist.
Right.
And we had early literacy facilitator. Karen McKenzie worked with us in many different roles.
Right.
Shared all of her many gifts.
Right. Yeah, she has, that's for sure. Anyway, that's a really interesting story, and I'm glad that I thought to ask you, because it's something that's here and people just accept it, but they don't understand how it arrived there. And I had totally forgotten the way it started. And it's interesting that it'll keep on going. So hopefully the funding always stays there, Colleen.
I think it will. The importance of the early years has been researched. It's backed up by data. So I feel it will be.
Right there. We're going to talk again to Colleen because we forgot an important little piece of history that she brought, and that was how it arrived that the name Brass Bell. Okay, tell that story, please.
Okay. So back in 1999, when there was a volunteer board of directors at that time, one of the members was Judy Milne, who was the principal of the Dorian Public School at that time, and she suggested the name Brass Bell to maintain the memory and integrity of the original brass bell that was used at the Dorian Public School to ring children in for recess and lunch hour, etc.
Oh, isn't that interesting?
So that is where the name Brass Bell Family Resource Center came from.
So that's good to add to that because that's a tribute to Judy because her and her bells. I mean, all principals in those days walked around ringing a bell. So that had a meaning for her.
Yeah. And all of our sites have a little brass bell.
Very good. Thank you for telling that. Got back to that.
I'm so glad we remembered. I think somehow we got on to another point. That was going to be my first share.
Okay. Anyway, that's perfect. Okay. Thanks, Kristen.